you doing, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight, the only wrestling podcast that brings you back 30 years with vintage audio featuring some of the biggest names of that time. This episode is going to be no exception. As always, the Pro Wrestling Spotlight covered all the news stories and breaking developments that happened in real time, and now we get to relive those moments right here on this podcast. Joining me, as always, direct from New York, and looking dapper today in a nice sport coat, and we'll be able to talk more about the visual elements that are going to be happening here at Pro Wrestling Spotlight. But I do want to introduce my co-host, the former managing editor of Pro Wrestling Illustrated and so many other great newsstand wrestling magazines back in the day, Mr. Bob Smith. Bob, how are you today?
I'm hanging in there. I want to apologize in advance for my somewhat raspy tone. I'm still recovering from COVID. I am COVID-free, but I have the cold symptom phase now, which will linger. It's in its second hit week now. I'm hoping that we can extend it into a month, and we need the box office, so.
Yeah. Well, it's still got a little bit of a grip on you, but your voice sounds just a tad sexier, Bob.
Well, maybe I'll we'll get some more.
Maybe we could call Misty Blue, and we can have a conversation.
Our guest this week will be Misty Blue, and
Misty.
We'll also have Kat. She'll be taking on Kat at the high school gymnasium next week.
Yeah, Kat LaRue.
That's right.
Blue and Kat LaRue. That was always a constant. But I do want to make a special announcement here, and we are undergoing a brand new, I wouldn't say direction as much as I would say a facelift or a fresh coat of paint on the show. We have hired a new member of the team who's going to be joining us direct from Tucson, Arizona. Let's bring him on. He is the producer and creative director for Pro Wrestling Spotlight as of this broadcast, and it's Marsh from Tucson, Arizona. Marsh, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing pretty good.
Welcome, man. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to be part of the team. We're back on the team. I used to do the YouTube clips back in the day.
Yes, you did. And I felt that it was necessary to kind of shake things up a little bit because I wanted so much a visual element to this. There's so many people that would love the opportunity to see this show on YouTube. And now that opportunity is here. And with Marsh's creative direction and coming in as producer with some wonderful ideas and some new direction. We're also going to be shaking up the clips a little bit. We're going to be expanding the number of clips that we had, but shortening them almost. And I hate to say we're going to go back to the future, but I mean, there was a lot of things that we missed covering, like maybe some of those zany commercials from WNYG and some of the madness that used to go on in the studio and some of those regular callers. So we're actually, we're planting our feet in a new direction. And, anyone who's watching this on YouTube now can see us and see that wonderful Bob Smith there with the sport coat and the new, bookcase in the background. And Marsh, of course, where you're located, which has a lot of wrestling memorabilia in the background. But before we get into the meat of the show, why don't you tell everybody out there, what you've done, how we met, and you've been involved in the wrestling business. This ain't your first rodeo, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I was when Sean X-Pac Waltman was doing his show, the Pro Wrestling for Life. They needed a new producer as well at a certain point, and I was able to join that team and give that show kind of a facelift as well. If you go back and watch them, you can see a definitive change in the visuals of it, and that was my chance to come on in. And once he decided he didn't want to do that show anymore, he introduced me to you because that was right around when you were going through a few changes as well with this format. Yep. And that's how we began our working relationship until it went the direction it had to go at the time. But I'm happy to come back to add more to the show than I was adding before. I feel like before I was taking little snippets and trying to put it out there, and this feels like a lot more of adding to the show than just almost repackaging the show.
Yeah, it actually gives you creative control of the production of the show, and Jay Farrar and previous to him Alex Robertson, dear friends of ours, Bob's and myself. So it wasn't anything that Jay did wrong. It was just a matter of I needed to add an element that we weren't delivering to our audience, and that was a crisper, a tighter show with more clips, more fun. And Jay did a great job, but I wanted the visual element that was so important. So what you brought to the table was kind of a complete package of pulling the clips, writing notes, delivering those notes to Bob and I, and then doing the video stuff. So that was so important. So I think that everybody out there, whether you're a regular listener to the show or not, you're going to be able to hear it still on all of your regular podcast outlets, but you'll also be able to see it now on YouTube. And patrons will also get that opportunity to get the shows early, like they always have. But and that would include probably the YouTube stream as well. We could release it to our patrons first, as well as the episode. So, Marsh, welcome, man. It's a pleasure to have you here. And one question I have for you right off the bat before we get started with the show is how long have you been collecting wrestling stuff? Because it seems like you have a pretty stacked deck up there.
I mean, it's kind of a messy story just because, well, so I grew up really loving it. Obviously, it was a collector of all sorts of stuff. Kind of grew out of it, came back to it. I was living in New York for a long time. I was adamantly not collecting anything because I moved a lot when I lived in New York. One of the last years I was there, my girlfriend was in the Navy, so she would buy me things and send me stuff. And one of the things she got me was tickets to the big event in New York. And she got me tickets specifically to meet Bret Hart. And that's what this is right here. When I met Bret, I got the signed glasses, picture with him and Neidhart. And that kind of like, it was all I needed to be hooked again and be like, I need more cool things around. And so I would say that as far as actively collecting, it's been probably the last 10 years or so. But yeah,
nice collection.
I dig around. This is my newest thing was the LJN ref because I like to ref. I like the referee. Finding an LJN ref was huge for me.
And you have ref before, haven't you?
Yes, a couple of times locally, and hoping to do that a little bit more now. So
awesome. Well, I want to welcome you again to the show as our producer and executive director. We look forward to the hard work you're going to be putting in and making this show, especially on the visual side of it, something that the fans have been lacking since they started listening to us. So thank you again. And also, I'll be seeing you in Vegas in a couple of weeks. Actually, the Cauliflower Alley reunion. It'll be done by the time the show airs, actually. So, so welcome aboard. We'll speak at the end of the show, and we'll talk about YouTube a little bit more.
Absolutely. Hopefully people will feel the difference or see the difference, but it stays mostly the same is what we're going for. So
exactly.
Thank you guys.
Exactly. Thank you, Marsh. Patreon. Before we get to the show, I do want to mention patrons. It's so important for you to participate in our Patreon account. We had a great Zoom with everybody, Bob, last week. Wasn't that cool?
Yes.
That was our biggest attended Zoom.
Yes, it was. I really like the guys. Everybody who showed up has been just terrific. And boy, do they know a lot, don't they? It's incredible.
They do. And
really
Eric McCarthy, I believe he was his first time, and because he's just started really getting into the show, and he's still listening from 1989, but he joined us on the Zoom, and he commented a lot on our Facebook page at how much fun he had, and everyone should do it. So that's for patrons. So that's kind of a little bit of a incentive. We do these on a monthly basis. You get to see Bob, myself, and talk wrestling with us, and it was a lot of fun to do this last Zoom, and we'll do it again next month. But we do want you to join that Patreon page. If you're a member on any level, you'll be able to participate in those Zooms with us. So $5 a month gets you in the door. It gets you the complete library of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight dating back to 1989. It gets you early access to the podcast and the YouTube of vodcast, I guess we're going to call it. So you'll be able to get all of that for $5 a month. And If you want a higher level of participation, there's $10 levels, $25 levels, all the way up to $100 a month as executive producer. The spiffs, the bonuses that you get are really very robust, from 8mm films, vintage wrestling magazines sent to your door every month, and so many other very, very cool things when it comes to vintage content. That's patreon.com/John Arezzi. $5 a month gets you in. It costs more for a damn cup of coffee at Starbucks, but we want you to give it a shot. Just go there and check out the levels. Patreon.com/John Arezzi. We really would appreciate your support on that. Well, Bob, this is our podcast episode 48. We're almost at our 1-year anniversary with you.
Yeah, I just thought of that. That's true.
It's coming up pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I also refereed. Did you know that? The good news is I refereed 2 matches, and one of them involved Cheetah Kid. The bad news, it was for Mark Tendler.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. It was in a shopping mall, I believe in Massapequa.
That must have been a
Long Island, New York. It actually was fun. It was fun. And we made an article about it, one of the wrestling magazines for GC London. I think it's not as easy as it looks. And it was really a true story. I didn't bullshit. I kind of said, I went over some stuff with Mark, how to position. The one thing that I learned was, if the wrestlers are starting to circle each other at the beginning of the match, move in the opposite direction. In other words, don't go toward them, go away from them and around them. That's how you keep from knocking into them and getting in the way of the action. And after about 5 minutes, I got it down. I thought I did a pretty decent job. Of course, I was about 60 pounds heavier than I, back then, and I didn't move around as well as I do now. But it was fun. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't make a career out of it or anything like that, but it was kind of fun.
Hey, I actually did some managing too for Mark Tendler.
For Mark?
Yeah, it was. I believe it was in Massapequa, or one of those small little high school gyms. I took on the persona of the manager of the Power Twins, and I think it was against Ray Odyssey and Tom Brandy. I believe was that tag team match, and I dressed up like a mafioso with a black suit and a white tie and the dark glasses, which I always wore back then, and. The payoff was really decent. It was, I think, $5 or something. It was like,
wow, well done. That's sub and a soda back then, yeah.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. But anyway, today, taping this episode 48 of this podcast, and it's covering show 178, which is back on November the 7th, 1992. So we're going to get into the meat of the show and talk about what happened 30 years ago.
That's right. And as usual, the usual beginning of the show with Don Liebel, the one man.
Donnie is back with the capsule.
Which we call the time capsule now. Back then it was the news capsule, done in a very traditional news style for those who have been listening to the podcast up to this point. It was kind of cool. I liked the ticker that you used for a while too. That was fun.
Yes. And of course, it was great back in the day when EVD, we had all those great sound effects. But Donnie had a really concise capsule this time, didn't he?
Yes, he did. There's a lot going on. I'm looking at the notes from it now, and it's like, title changes and in big and small federations galore. And you want to get to it right now?
Yeah. And the biggest question in wrestling was, where the heck is Jake the Snake Roberts? So lots to go over today.
That's been a question throughout his career, isn't it? That's the question. Where is Jake Roberts?
Yeah, and why doesn't he stay away?
Well,
he resurfaces.
Yes, he does. Well, anyway, let's get the show on the road, or I should say the old show, the original show, with the Don Liebel time capsule.
Good morning, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Rough week.
Oh, yeah, it was. And I'll tell you something, it seemed to be a rather quiet week started in wrestling, and quite a few interesting things took place towards the end, or at least news leaking out. So a real jam-packed capsule today.
Okay, go to it.
All righty. Well, it's been confirmed on October 27th in Terre Haute, Indiana's Holman Center. Shawn Michaels pinned the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith to win the Intercontinental Championship. Now, the match is scheduled to be shown on next week's Saturday night main event at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Fox Television Network. Now, on the World Wrestling Federation Survivor Series pay-per-view, the Bret Hart-Michaels contest will be belt versus belt. Much to everyone's surprise, Kerry Von Erich returned to his alma mater, the world-famous Sportatorium in Dallas, Texas, last week. Now, during a match when Al Perez was being double-teamed by Killer Tim Brooks and his manager, Skander Akbar, Kerry came on the scene to clean house. This was the only appearance Kerry made on the Global Wrestling Federation card. Well, the mask is off. King Killer's identity is a secret no more. Managers Nate the Rat and Richard Lee in Memphis-based United States Wrestling Association brought in King Killer to supposedly get rid of Jerry the King Lawler. Well, to no great fanfare, the Killer's identity has been exposed. He's Mean Mike Miller. And turning to the Pacific Northwest, Championship Wrestling USA has a new television titleist. Johnny Rambo claimed that honor from Mike Winner recently in Salem, Oregon. Also, for the first time in 2 years, Beetlejuice Art Barr is back wrestling in Oregon. Barr has been spending most of his work time during that time span in Mexican promotions. Last Sunday, more than 1,000 fans showed their support of the New England Wrestling Federation in Burlington, Vermont. The man most people came to see was Legion of Doom's Hawk, and he certainly didn't disappoint those in the Memorial Auditorium, as his opponent Richard Charlin had the 3 count scored on him, courtesy of Hawk delivering a clothesline off the top rope. And finally, on this day in wrestling history, the scrapbooks tell us on November 7th, 1973, 19 years ago in San Antonio, Texas, then National Wrestling Alliance champion Jack Briscoe was taken to a 1-hour draw by Jose Lothario. It was 13 years ago today in Japan that Harley Race won the NWA belt for a 4th time in pinning Giant Baba. And in what must have been Tennessee on November 7th, 1978, beautiful Bobby Eaton and Randy Savage went to a 15-minute time limit draw. For Pro Wrestling This Week, I'm Don Leibel reporting. Capsule time, 10:08.
Once in a while on the old tapes, and I want to tell the listeners this, John, is that there were gaps once in a while. There'd be a couple seconds of silence. That
No, really?
It was, well, I just want them to know that was the broadcast.
Yeah, well, that's WNYG. That's, there's always little glitches there.
I mean, Dodd didn't curse or something like that. It was just a situation where, and by the way, I do believe in our last episode when it was announced that PWI was being sold, that my name was mentioned and it got cut out because of the same problem at the same time. So those things occurred back then.
Yeah, especially at that little rinky-dink radio station, I think I told you about our Christmas bonus once year at WNYG, didn't I?
Yes, the bottle of ketchup?
The bottle of ketchup that had expired date on it, yeah. That was a good one.
Them's eats.
And it was also when I was an employee there was every Friday was, not just payday, it was race to the bank because they'd run out of money every Friday. So as soon as you got that check, you raced to the bank and, everyone's nervous online, waiting to cash their check. And all of a sudden it'll be like, if you're like in the back, the teller would wave you off like there's no more money. I never forget one day I was so pissed that I took the check and I went over to the owner's house, this big, beautiful house in Babylon, New York. And I was like, where's the money? So Mr. Hornstein took the cash out of his pocket and paid me that week. So it was an interesting place to work, Bob. It was local radio at its finest.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You have that experience under your belt. By the way, I'd never correct Don Leibel, but I just want to, because I was around at this point, it wasn't King Killer. It was the King Killer. The inflection was kind of off. He was brought in as a monster heel to try to end the career of Jerry the King Lawler. Therefore, he's the King Killer.
Right.
Get it?
Yeah.
It went over like a lead balloon. Jerry would always create these monster characters that come in and try to, Did you remember that period for a while? It was Tagar and Leatherface he had for a while, and the original Leatherface, by the way, there's offshoots of Leatherface all over the world, including in Japan. So that kind of worked. But Lawler had a tendency to bring in guys who were like literal monsters.
Yeah. So he'd look better after he beats them.
I don't know about that. I just think maybe he was just trying to get people over on the cheap because they always had masks on. Could be anybody under there, Yeah,
Cherry, I don't know about him being cheap, Bob.
No, sir. I attended a card in Memphis when Rob Zukowski, who was Rob Van Dam, and Sabu were on the opening matches. I don't even want to tell you what they made. I don't even want to tell you. And they were great. I mean, oh God, I saw during that little tour I had in Memphis, I saw Rob Van Dam take on Nightmare Danny Davis. I believe is in West Memphis, Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
Best opening match I've ever seen to this day. Because you know how good they both are. And Rob was young and supple and athletic and crazy, willing to do anything. And it blew the roof off this place. And it's like, I turned to whoever I was with. I said, that's the best opener I've ever seen. So I'm probably going off on a tangent, but I think back at those days of Memphis and then realized they told me what their payoffs were. And we were buying each other beers because they couldn't afford very many of them, if you know what I mean. So
yeah, it was the Mark Hendler pay grade.
Yeah, that's about right. Well said. You know, that's a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the meat of Don's weekly appearance, and you read a commercial not too long after that about a Legion of Doom Hawk meet and greet. You hosted it, right?
Yeah, it was an event that was able to book. It was kind of a memorabilia show I was putting together, and Hawk was the guy that I chose for it. And, that's why I brought him on the show. That's why he did the interview. So it was kind of a really well-attended event back then, which we'll be getting to on the next episode.
Very interesting. And then the Death of Superman comic release at L&S Comics.
It was, that was a big deal. That was a big event. I don't know how much of a comic book aficionado you are, Bob. I was always a Superman guy, but of course I got out of that when I was, an adult.
I don't even want to talk about my comic book fixation because between the ages of 0 and about 14, I collected everything. I had a literal locker in my basement full of what today would be rare Silver Age comic books. And my parents hounded me. What you doing reading them funny books? You're too old to be reading. You're too old to be reading them funny books with the Superman and all that. You're too old for this. You're too old for this. They didn't.
Were you a DC or a Marvel guy?
Both. I liked them both equally.
Mm-hmm. You're gonna laugh when I tell you what I liked. I like Superman. Like
don't
Justice League.
Don't tell me you like
America.
Charlton. Okay, that's all.
No. I'm talking about. There was. I wasn't really a Marvel guy. I was always more of a DC guy when it came to that type of stuff with Batman. I liked Batman. I liked Superman.
Mm-hmm.
But the other stuff, I loved Archie comic books when I was a kid, and I loved Richie Rich. If you remember Richie Rich,
yes, sure.
Those types of, so I collected comics. I wish I had the comics I had back then.
Oh, dude!
But I used to love them. 10 cents, 12 cents an issue.
15. And, there's the punch for me. I got tired of hearing the badgering from my folks. Yeah. So I took my comic book collection, including doubles of the original Silver Surfer, comics that are worth so much money today, and I gave them to a cousin.
Did you really?
I did.
Ooh.
I regretted it because I knew they were collectible even then. I knew. Oh, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, I tell you though,
I'm going to cry right in front of all these people on YouTube.
Please, don't tear up on us. But yeah, L&S Comics was the place, and they made a big deal out of the Superman Death of Superman comic release, and and if you want to hear, exactly that spot or whatever as we talk about it, patreon.com/John Arezzi has the complete unedited episode. But I guess there was something else, Bob. I mean,
all right. This is a first for us here. We're both laughing. This is a first because we're going to play an ad. We're going to play an ad for the day. John, you're going to have to explain this because I can't.
Oh, okay.
Announcing the grand opening of Long Island's only teen disco, The Club, keeping our young adults off the street in a drug and alcohol-free environment. The Club, located at 9 Park Avenue South in Bayshore. Call 968-0507, 968-0507. The Club, catering to young adults 13 and up. The Club, the place to party, the place to dance, the place to meet that someone special, the place for romance. Long Island's only teen disco catering to young adults 13 and up. The Club, located at 9 Park Avenue South in Bayshore. Call 968-0507, 968-0507. The Club, come down, come dance, come give it a chance. come romance. A place for young adults to meet, catering to young adults 13 and up. The Club. Call 968-0507, 968-0507.
Okay, we're back here with Pro Wrestling This Week in the Club. Have you been in there yet, Tom?
Kidding, I was there the first night looking around for a date. No, I haven't. I don't know.
You go to the junior high also, and like.
No, you know.
Girl, come here. You want some candy?
No, I hit the high school. I like I'm a little older than junior high, though. Not much, but a little bit older.
I gotcha.
No, I haven't been to the club, but nice, not a bad thing. You know, keeping our young adults off the street in a drug and alcohol-free environment.
That's exactly right. That's what we advocate here: drug-free society.
That's right.
Wow, that was an interesting little dialogue with Tom Pantaleo after that commercial, which was an odd commercial to begin with.
A nightclub for 13 and up. What could go wrong?
Oh, all kinds of things. But that music bed, you know, when you're talking about a teen disco.
The place for romance?
I know. It was very inappropriate.
The
comments were inappropriate. The spot was inappropriate. And you know what the biggest question I got on this whole thing? I don't know if it was a sponsor, if I sold this commercial or not, or if someone else brought it on the show. I have no freaking clue.
Well,
but it's hilarious to listen to.
An ad's an ad, I guess. But I'm listening to the end. The thing gets farther and farther out. The more the narrator, you know, explains what you can do with the club. I'm agog. I don't know what to say.
It could be the oddest commercial that we've ever run on Pro Wrestling.
That's pretty out there. It really was.
It was very out there. But that was an interesting. And Tom Pantaleo, I mean, that engineer, he was always a snarky guy in the beginning. I mean, and even that conversation was a little inappropriate. I mean, he certainly would get canceled today if
yes, he would
said something like that on the radio these days.
It was all.
It would be all over. It would be all over.
All in
God. Yeah.
But you know what? I kind of liked his contributions to the show around that point. He had a good voice and he had a good sense of humor too. He's still
doing DJ work on Long Island, man.
Are you serious?
WBAB, which is the rock station there. He moved around quite a bit. He's a mainstay on Long Island radio, and also a graduate of West Babylon High School that my sister Donna actually graduated with. He calls himself Rocky Pantaleo now on the air.
Oh, Long Island.
Good old Long Island. But, I guess we will continue on. And we have another interesting segment coming up with a guy that's no longer with us.
You know? Yeah, our main guest, Dennis Coralluzzo, the famed New Jersey-based promoter. And what was your relationship like with him, John? We'll go on from there. I only brushed up with him a couple of times, oddly enough, because I knew everybody else. But I think I only appeared maybe at 2 of his shows. So what was it like working with him?
Dennis was a nice guy. I mean, Dennis was a promoter. You know, Dennis was a wrestling guy. He was a bit of a worker. But he and I always got along pretty famously, you know. He did a lot of good things in New Jersey. He promoted a lot of shows. He helped people with charity benefits and such. But Dennis was an interesting cat. I always got along with him and his partner in the Monster Factory, which was Larry Sharp. And Dennis would be the type of guy, even though, you know, I never really charged him for any advertising. He'd give tickets to us. It was always a good back and forth. It wasn't like a Tommy D or some of the other slimy promoters that were out there at the time. Dennis, I enjoyed the camaraderie with, and he gave me great opportunities, including the time I called that match between Backlund and Funk. That was kind of the highlight of anything ever called on a play-by-play. So I liked Dennis. I liked him very much. And I was, we'll get into it, obviously, in 94 when the ECW screw job takes place with the NWA. But nothing bad to say about Dennis at all.
Nice to hear. Very good. All right. Well, the situation at this point is he had applied to become a member of the National Wrestling Alliance, the NWA, which, you know, WCW wanted the name. They didn't want the name. They wanted the name. They wanted the titles to mean something. Then they didn't. It was a mess. So I think whoever was left at the NWA decided to seek new promotional people to try to get involved. Am I remembering that correctly? I think I am.
Yeah, I mean the NWA was looking for members.
They were. So let's hear from Dennis now and hear his thoughts about becoming an NWA member and some other topics as well.
Now, another thing that we wanted to talk to you about, there's been a lot of rumors circulating over the last several weeks. The NWA, which used to be the largest promotional base in this country years ago, with territories all over the world. Rumors are that they're going to start admitting new promoters in and new territories to maybe start branching out again. And we've heard your name bantered about the NWA. Can you tell us if that's true or not?
Yeah, it is, John. I have officially applied to be a member of the NWA. Years ago, they always had a membership criteria, but they more or less didn't let anybody know about it. You know what I'm saying? And they just kept it amongst a certain clique of people. So I'm like the outsider trying to get in now. And I meet all the requirements, and they were supposed to notify me by midnight last night. I haven't heard nothing yet, probably because of the weekend, but I'll be on it first thing Monday morning, and I'm sure I'll have no problem being accepted. The thing I'm looking forward to is that, according to their bylaws, that their champion and their tag team champions must defend their title belts in the individual territories that are members of the NWA.
Yeah.
So that would be neat if I could bring Chono in and Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham if they still have the straps, you know?
Well, WCW is not calling them unified champions, not even calling them WCW or NWA champions.
I know, it's very, it's very confusing what's happening, because technically you're supposed to, if you're in the NWA, if you're a member of the NWA, you're supposed to recognize their champion. But as you see, WCW doesn't do that. They recognize Ron Simmons.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And he's certainly going over like a lead balloon.
I know. It's just like very confusing as like some of the stuff that they're doing. But I actually can see a lot of regional promotions starting up again, and hopefully this will be like the old NWA where they had different territories and the champion would come in and defend his belt against your regional champion, and maybe it'll stimulate some interest back in wrestling.
Mm-hmm. Dennis, how long have you been promoting?
Since 1985.
So you've been in there for a while.
Yeah.
And the state of the business today, boy, I tell you, when you got into it, it's a little bit different.
John, it's just unbelievable right now. Just, I think TV's more or less killed it.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. But like I said, I do well. When we do independent shows, we promote them well, we advertise them well, and we always get a good crowd at them. And I think more people that come to watch independent shows, and they get an opportunity to see a different product and not something that kills them for 4 and 5 hours on a weekend. They're going to continue to come back, and that's the direction I see happen. I mean, if you look across the country, like Smoky Mountain and USWA, and there's a lot of independent federations out there that are starting to draw people, and people are becoming interested in their product because it's different. And I can, matter of fact, for anybody that gets the Observer, Dave Meltzer's newsletter, he has results in there every week. And if you would follow them results and look at them, each week you see different promotions popping up all over the country where results, and that's a good sign. And I've always been, a proponent supposedly of independent wrestling.
Well, you certainly promoted some great shows, and I'll tell you, one of my biggest thrills in my professional wrestling career has been the night that I called the match with Chris Cruz between Terry Funk and Bob Backlund.
That's right.
That was one of my all-time thrills, just being able to sit there and call that match for television setup, and I enjoyed that more than
John, I'll tell you what,
anything.
we're still working on getting some TV. When we do the TV, we want to do it right, and I'm looking forward to having you back to call the matches again.
Well, I certainly enjoy working with you folks down there, and we hope to see you next Saturday night.
He did some good stuff. I'm going through a list here of the people on the card that he was promoting on this appearance on the show. He had Chris Candido versus Sabu. Wow. I mean, think about how good that match must have been. And then he was promoting a fundraising show which was going to have Candido against Ray Odyssey, who was a really good pro in this area, and Lightning Kid, who we later know as X-Pac and all that other stuff, versus Bill Wilcox, who at one point was considered one of the best prospects in all of wrestling.
No,
So
I
interesting
remember.
stuff.
Yeah, it is. Dennis was always good at getting and giving some of these younger, especially he'd be very his finger was on the pulse of who was hot and who the sheets were talking about. Like, what's the Observer saying about this indie guy and that guy, and that's how we got Lightning Kid, Sean, and Candido was a local guy, obviously. But one thing about Dennis, he did keep his finger on the pulse of like up and comers and how can he integrate them into his shows.
Mm-hmm. And not only did he apply to the NWA, he became
Well, yes, he did.
the president of the National Wrestling Alliance.
Yeah, and that all kind of that house of cards crumbled after they tried to do the deal with ECW, which will be covered in a couple of years.
Yeah, and I went and
that
looked
was
at
a sad night, man.
I looked at a list of other NWA presidents from that time period for about 5 years, and they were just holding on by a thread, weren't they?
Yes, they were. It was almost over for them, And fortunately, today, I mean, Billy Corrigan from Smashing Pumpkins runs the NWA, and he at least is running regularly, and he's pretty innovative in what he's doing. But yeah, the NWA, I've always loved the NWA. They were always my favorite organization because of their rich history, because of everything that they did. So I always have a warm place in my heart for anything NWA to this day.
I really root for today's NWA with Billy Corgan. First of all, kudos to him for sticking his neck out and even buying the thing.
Yes,
he's made it more of a success than I thought he would have by this point, which is nice. I just think his talent base is just a little thin at this point. If he can build and create some, and not sign old stars, but create some new ones, I think the sky's the limit. I really do, because the production of that show. If you ever watch the YouTube show. Mm-hmm. From the theme song, which really hooks you right into the action, and it's got the old TBS feel to it, the old 605 feel, as it were. And you got to root for that, man. You just have to.
Yeah, the only thing that he's lacking right now is really a good TV deal, because I think and I think the other thing I think that's going on with him and NWA now is that it's kind of a very small operation. Even though Billy is a millionaire and all of that. You could lose an awful lot of money too, but he needs a TV deal, and he needs more of a better infrastructure there. I know our friend Medusa produces all the female matches for him, so she has high hopes that they're going to grow this thing, and she loves working with him. Just what a great guy he is. But they still need that infrastructure where if they're going to get off of YouTube, and I'm not saying YouTube's a bad place, but you need to get some type of television presence to really expand it.
I mean, Fight TV is an excellent app, or whatever you want to call it, or network, whatever it is, whatever they call it these days. It really is good. There's just so much wrestling and boxing and combat sports on there. It's excellent. But you gotta have, like you said, you gotta have some sort of a weekly presence on a dial. When there's no such thing as a dial anymore, so I don't know how to put it. You got to be on TV. That's the word.
You got to get on a cable network or something. But we hope he does. But anyway, going back 30 years to Dennis Coralluzzo in the NWA, he was certainly excited about becoming a member and promoting these shows and raising money for charities and individuals. I can't say enough nice things about that guy. And let him rest in peace. He was absolutely really, really cool guy.
Mm-hmm. Well, we segue from the future NWA president to what we call the bread and butter of your shows during the era, which was, of course, the callers.
Mm-hmm.
And you had your favorite callers, and you had some that you weren't quite so fond of. But it was nice. The one nice thing about going back to Long Island after the New York City time was that you got to hear from some of your oldest fans again. Isn't that right?
Yeah, the ones who were the regulars on WNYG, the ones that were in the listening area that could call in, like from the early days. We always had the Vinny from West Babylons, the George from Lindenhurst, all those little characters that kind of developed lives of their own. And on this rendition of the, back to WNYG, we do have some of those that call in. Still waiting for George from Lindenhurst to call in, waiting to this day. Hopefully he'll be in a future show. He's
been a while now.
Oh my God. Yeah. It was, when I left GBB, that was it for George. I mean, I don't know if he ever comes back. I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see that. But there were still plenty of characters out there. And the thing about NYG, once again, only one line getting into the studio. One line. So it was very frustrating at times. And Tom, didn't screen the calls. I didn't know who was. I was just picking up, all right, who's this?
Right.
So that was, you never know. Because I was uploading a show today, and I was like, who's this? Vince Russo rules, so we'll hear that on the next episode.
Oh, boy.
Like, oh. And then he was like, I was like, you're an idiot. And then and we went back and forth, like we were like throwing insults at each other until Tom Pantaleo cut him off. But I was hot. I was ready to just like to lose it on this guy who was calling to promote Russo's show. It was crazy.
Such was the tone of that era, unfortunately.
Yes.
So you ready to hear from a caller?
Oh yeah.
We are going to hear from Mike from College Point.
And we have a nice story about him, who this guy was. If people don't know already, it was Mike Johnson.
Now one of the big journalists in the entire wrestling game right now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to that clip right now.
It's Mike from College Point.
Mike, how are you?
Pretty good. Sign me up for that bus trip.
You got it.
How much is it?
I do have the price right here. It's $30 if you're a Booster Club member, $35 if you're not.
Okay. You got my number.
Yes, I certainly do.
Two things.
Yes.
What is the Slam Jam that they're advertising on USA on Titan programs?
Okay, Arista Records. Okay, and in conjunction with the WWF, we're putting out another wrestling album.
They are.
The WWF had 2 albums previously when business was real hot with Epic Records.
I wonder if Piper's new track is going to be on there.
It might be, but they have a compilation like they did with Land of 1,000 Dancers when they had all those wrestlers appearing on their first album.
Yeah.
They did something similar for this third album, but it's a new record company, Arista, and I believe it's debuting overseas in England first.
Yeah, because I know Piper has a new single out.
Yes.
A record single out. Yeah, good. I like the offer.
I guess these guys need to look over, for something, cover their bases because the wrestling business is not doing very good. Maybe they all want to become recording artists.
Yeah, but they got to get the public interested again.
Yeah.
And
I think the only way to do that is to get some fresh blood in the business.
Yeah,
have Vince McMahon call me up, and I'll certainly don the tights, and I will take on any comer in the WWF.
Including Vince Russo?
Yeah, first on the list.
I'd pay for that. Double pay-per-view.
Yes, it was pretty interesting on the bus at Halloween Havoc, Mike. Of course, you were one of the participants on the bus trip, and we almost had the local version of West Side Story.
Yeah, well, they would have gotten their butts kicked. Let's not rile up the listeners out there. Yeah. The other thing is, do you think it would help WCW if Bill Watts was ejected, considering he's screwing it over?
I would have said a couple of weeks ago it was too early to tell, but that was before Halloween Havoc. We've been attempting to get Watts on the program. I'd like to ask him what's going down there. Of course, he does not like to speak to the media very much. He talks to Wade Keller occasionally, but that's really been about it.
I don't know what it is, but it seemed to me like the Federation was a bit more jumping when K. Allen Fry was in charge.
Yeah.
Watts pretty much, it's like he's trying to get back at Jim Crockett for screwing over the UWF by screwing over WCW.
Well, I really don't know what the hell is going on down there, but hopefully it'll turn around because it's getting real sad to see.
Yeah, because I was watching it today, and they've got Steamboat and Douglas challenging for the tag belts, and they've never even teamed up before.
Mm-hmm. Well,
it doesn't make any sense. I have no idea where any of his angles are going.
Unfortunately, we're not the powers that be.
Yeah, well.
Okay, Mike, listen, take care, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sure thing, John.
Okay, take care now.
Bye.
I agreed with him. Mm-hmm. Kip Fry, we hardly knew you.
Yeah, Kip was on the right road, and then Watts came in and then mucked it all up, so to speak. But that was a real interesting call from Mike, and what he was referring to was the bus trip we did to Halloween Havoc, where our bus was parked next to Vince Russo's bus, who also had a bus trip there from his show, Vicious Vincent's World of Wrestling. And it was almost like a modern-day version of West Side Story when the buses, after the show, when we all kind of were loading up the fans on the individual buses, because the fans on Russo's bus, and he was there with a big black cape on, almost like a wizard outfit or something, Russo was. And his fans were like screaming, Arezzi sucks. And my fans were like, Russo sucks. And they're literally feet from each other, looking at each other. And that would have been the weirdest gang war in the history of mankind if my listeners and Russo listeners went at it. And Mike Johnson was on that trip. So that was kind of an interesting memory that I took from that phone call.
As someone who's been on a John Arezzi bus trip, a couple of them, as I recall,
yeah,
that would have been a really interesting fight scene. It would have been friggin' hilarious. That's what it would have been. I hate to tell you that. It would have been people who can't fight getting into fisticuffs is capital entertainment. I'm glad nothing went down, though. I really
am. I would have loved to have seen Fred the Elephant Boy and his brother and Ski from Hicksville take on some of the Russo guys. And then me and Russo, of course, going at it at that time. That would have been a fun thing to watch. And like I said, it would have been an episode which would have been pretty epic.
And you know what you could be thankful for? If that happened today, like at this moment in time, everybody's got a cell phone. So that would have escalated things, right? Somebody would have caught all this on tape, and it would have been an absolute fracas.
It would have gone viral for sure.
Yep.
In modern day terminology, it certainly would have.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll get on from there. We have a hodgepodge of other calls. Definitely edited together by Marsh here. And in a bunch of really interesting calls, people were talking about one we're not going to listen to, but Howard Finkel took a bump. Can you believe that? He got attacked by Kamala?
Yeah, that was, I think, I don't remember too many times we actually did that. It might have been a handful or less, but that was an interesting one. Yeah.
I never even knew that occurred. I can't imagine him getting physically involved in anything.
Yeah, but he didn't seem the type.
No, but then again, they had Vader beat the crap out of Gorilla Monsoon, so anything is possible. When they're desperate for ratings, they'll try anything.
Terry Funk beating on Mel Phillips in that infamous.
Oh God, yeah, the hat thing, the hat incident. Yeah. Yes. All right, so let's listen to this hodgepodge of listeners right now.
Hi, this is Rob from Medford.
How you doing, Rob?
All right. John, do you have any idea what a Royal Rumble is going to be this year?
Down in Florida.
Florida? What part, do you know?
Don't really know.
And next Saturday, you were talking about this bus trip and everything. Do you know there's wrestling right here in Farmingville next week?
I was familiar with that. Yes, Tommy D promoting a show.
Yeah.
But Tommy D really does not keep in contact and give us press releases when he has shows on Long Island.
I had heard it's going to be a Superfly Snooker against Don Morocco in the main event.
Okay. Yeah. I know Tommy's running here Friday, November 20th at Babylon High School.
And
the only reason I know that is because I got it on the Babylon Beacon right here, the local newspaper.
What's the main event going to be in that?
Main event is Paul Mr. Wonderful Orndorff taking on Jimmy Snuka.
Uh-huh.
They also got tag team action, the new Demolition taking on Greg Valentine and Hercules. 4 other exciting bouts, including S.D. Jones. That should be a 4-star match there. And, only kidding.
That sounds like a good card.
And the famous midgets, yes.
And as far as WrestleMania goes, they had originally said the Garden, but last week you said Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. That's most likely going to be the place for WrestleMania this year.
Do you know what arena that's going to be in?
It'll be one of the casinos, maybe the Trump Casino, maybe the Mirage. Who knows? We'll find out soon enough.
And that clown that we saw on TV last week, is that Matt Bourne?
Yes, it is. Big Josh in the WCW.
Is he going to wrestle?
I don't think he's going to wrestle right now, but he's going to be turning. Right now he's a clown. He's like a happy-go-lucky type of fellow.
And he's going to turn evil?
He's going to turn evil, yes. He'll be...
oh, great. Something more for the kids.
Well, I tell you, it's... seeing him last week on TV, I'm sure that Matt Bourne is not... I don't know if he's happy or not about the role, but...
either that or he just needs the money.
Well, money talks.
Yep, I guess so. All right, John, thanks a lot.
Thank you for your call.
Bye-bye.
Okay, 661-1440, and the number to call here at pro wrestling this week, and lots of other things taking place in the world of pro wrestling, and we'll be talking about them as we always do right here. Hello, you're next.
Yes.
Who's this?
This is Blaine from Great Neck.
Who?
Blaine from Great Neck.
Blaine, how are you?
Okay, I'm fine. You said last week that there was wrestling in Great Neck.
Yes.
Yes, there was a Great Neck North High yesterday.
Okay, were you at the show?
Yes, it was.
How was it?
It was good. The main event was Jimmy Snuka versus Greg Valentine. It was 2 out of 3 falls.
Who won that match?
Snuka won in a cheap way on the 3rd fall.
No kidding.
And all the wrestlers gave autographs out.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
How was the crowd? Was it a large crowd there?
Oh, not really. It was kind of empty, though.
Well, that's because the promoter is a goofball, probably, because he should be contacting us. You know, we have a wrestling talk show. A lot of fans who would have went to that show last night if they knew about it.
Yeah.
How did you find out about it?
I think it was very interesting.
How did you find out about that show last night?
Oh, because I go to that school, Great Neck North High.
That's because you go to the school, right?
Yeah.
Okay. How did you find out about this program?
Because about a year ago,
Oh, so you've been listening for a while?
Yeah.
Okay, it's great. It's the first time you've called in, though.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your call. Anything else?
No.
Okay, thanks for your call. I appreciate the report.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Okay, Blaine from Great Neck. And the only reason he knew about the big show last night in Great Neck is because he went to the high school. I tell you, what are wrong with some of these promoters? I have no idea. It's a sick world, isn't it? Hi, you're next. Let me just tell you, fans, I'm not one to withhold information from you, as you know. And even though I have not heard from promoter Tommy D about this show coming up in Babylon, I'm going to plug it anyways. Professional wrestling returns to Babylon at the Babylon High School. That's Friday, November 20th. It's 8 o'clock p.m. The Babylon High School is right by the Babylon Railroad Station, right off Deer Park Avenue. Main event is going to be Paul Mr. Wonderful Orndorff taking on Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Tag team action, 2 out of 3 falls. The new Demolition, Axe and Blast will take on Greg Valentine and the Mighty Hercules. There'll be 4 other exciting matches, including S.D. Jones and the Famous Midgets. Tickets ringside is $12.50. General admission just $8. And you can pick up your tickets at Loman's here in Babylon. That's on Deer Park Avenue. The Coffee Cup Restaurant on Sunrise Highway. Sport Shack at Deer Park Avenue. And Seymour Lighting Route 110. And that is for Tommy D's show on February the 20th.
Interesting segment.
You promoted it, but you didn't seem happy to do it.
No, I was not happy at all. First and foremost, Blaine from Great Neck. You know, he kind of fired me up just because of the questions I asked him. How did you know about the wrestling show? Well, I go to the high school. So he is one of those guys that becomes this back on WNYG character. We'll be hearing from him again in future episodes. But his delivery and everything about him was interesting. But the Tommy D situation fired me up. Here's a guy who I knew pretty well, actually. He was a good friend of George Napolitano. I met Tommy years previous to that. He used to promote the spot shows for the WWF and later WWF. He was an odd duck, this guy. But he knew I had a wrestling talk show. He knew I had an audience. He never participated in anything. And he never reached out for me to help him promote a show, whether it was for tickets or anything else. So it always baffled me. But once again, you know, there's wrestling in the area. I would mention it. I'd talk about it if I could. And I was at my boiling point with him there. But I still gave him the plug, Bob, because that's a nice guy. That's the type of guy I am or was and still am.
Well,
playing
devil's advocate, maybe he still had that WWF connection and didn't feel comfortable reaching out to somebody like you.
Well, yeah, maybe he felt if he did anything promotional with me, especially since I was like a public enemy to them, that if he had any aspirations of doing some more business with them or getting talent from them, that association with John Arezzi back in the day would not be something that they would look upon very nicely.
Yeah. All I know is back at the PWI offices, I'd hear the name Tommy D every 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Like he'd present a show somewhere, and then you wouldn't hear from him for 3 months, and then he's got another show coming up, and it was always at a high school.
Yeah, he'd appear magically after several months of being absent, and it would always get that cringe moment when I heard that name. It was almost like, the Three Stooges or whatever. It was like Niagara Falls. Slowly I turn, step by step, inch by inch. And that's when I hear the name Tommy D, that's the kind of reaction that I typically had and kind of still do all these years later.
Well, John, it was quite a show. And, other segments on the show with the callers, they talk about, stars like El Gigante, and they talk about Smoky Mountain. There's a lot of talk about Kerry Von Erich and what he's up to. And people who want to hear this, they know where to go. They can go right to Patreon and hear the complete show in its entirety.
That is true. You'll be able to hear me talk with Mickey B, who has a multicolored tier guest on his show. I mean, Mickey B is going to come more into play, and Mickey B is he's going to be on with Captain Lou Albano pretty soon, and that's that reunion between those two, and we'll get into it in the future episodes. But Mickey, it was always good to have my show precede Mickey's show, because I'd always see him. We'd able to banter back and forth, and what a great guy that freaking guy was. I mean, he recently passed away, but my God, what a good man he was.
I find it so heartwarming that in the cynical radio and wrestling businesses, you legitimately were friends with him and speak to him so kindly, because it's like most times that's not the case, and you really did seem to like his friendship and his talent, and you were a fan.
Yeah, I was, and he was very close with my sister, and my sister still has a profile picture up of him and her on Facebook, even though he's passed away, 3-4 months now. I mean, it devastated her, and he was such a vibrant soul, a vibrant individual, and he had one-hit record, Bob. He actually sang with Paul Simon before Simon and Garfunkel. They were in a band together. It was crazy, his history in the music business, and he had a record deal. I think it was a short-lived one, but he had a hit record, Bob, and I don't think you'll recall the name of it. I'd love to find it, Marsh, if we could ever play it. It's called Here Comes the Garbage Man by Mickey B. It was the sexy garbage man who the women would just can't wait to put their cans out so Mickey B can just do what he did.
Yeah, well, you're looking for the words, right? I can't think of how to put it either.
No, I can't. When they put their cans out, I figured I might as well stop there, Bob.
Yeah, that says it all.
That says it all for sure.
Well, John, we've gone through another show, my friend. And
yes,
we have some big stuff coming up in the future, don't we, in the future weeks here?
Oh my God, I'm so excited about this, and it's really an interesting kind of a look back, and it's a revamp of the show a little bit, because there was so many quirky things that went on, between the phone callers and the commercials and the, some of the craziness that was in and around serious talk about pro wrestling and the great guests. But it's going to be a little bit different for our listeners and our patrons to hear this new direction, and especially the new element that we bring into play, which is going to be the video side of it. So let's bring Marsh back on now and kind of talk about what people can look forward to as they see us on video.
I was just digging up, trying to find Here Comes the Garbage Man, just to see if it was Mickey's Men. Was it possible that he was part of Mickey's Men?
Yeah. Do you see Here Comes the Garbage Man on YouTube or something? It could be on YouTube.
Yep, I'm seeing some on YouTube, and then the Garbage Man song I'm also seeing, which does explicitly say in the stick out your can, "Here comes the Garbage Man."
Wow.
I'll do a little more research. We'll see what we can't find.
Yeah. Maybe we could on the next episode. I know it would be great. It would be like when Mickey is on the show with Captain Lou Albano, which I believe is going to. Let me pull out the tapes here. Mickey B, Captain Lou. Actually, it's on the 11/21/1992 show number 180. So this is show 178. So it's just in a couple of weeks.
We'll have it ready by then.
Do your research and get Here Comes the Garbage Man, so we could give everybody out there a taste of what The Prince of Rock and Roll, 42-inch waistline and all. And another quick story about Mickey B. He was very heavily involved in the Jewish community and used to raise money. There was a telethon every year with Hasidic Jews, and he brought me to one of these telethons with him because he would be the MC of these things. And there is video of me out there, and I have to, and I know where it is. I have to digitize it, of me actually doing the Jewish dances with the Hasidic Jews on this telethon.
Were you quite a dancer back then?
That would be golden. Are you kidding me? But that's so. I mean, I couldn't believe I did it, and he wanted me to do it.
Marsh, he was probably as good a dancer as he was a wrestler. We'll put it that way.
Oh yeah. There you go, Bob. That's exactly the right way to put it, because exactly, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I didn't know what I was there, but it was for Mickey. And when Mickey asked you to do something, you did it because he was just, and he'd do anything for you, this guy. And he was so instrumental in getting me back on WEVD too, which was another thing that I'll always remember him for. Because if it wasn't for him, I would have never went back on that big station. And we'll be getting into that in the future months, not weeks.
That's fantastic. I got one quick question for you, and then we'll talk about the YouTube stuff. Did you ever get to do announcing again for Dennis Coralluzzo?
I don't think so.
Okay. I was just curious because
I don't think he ever got TV. I don't think he ever got TV after that.
He never had television, no.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah, it's a funny thing about the East Coast in the Indies. Very rarely did they have television. I think the only one that really qualified was IWCCW or Herb Abrams, please. Oh, Herb. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, he was a legend for wrong reasons.
Yeah, the wrong reasons, right?
Yeah, but don't talk bad to him, to Sunny Beach, though, to Rick Allen. Herb actually, when Herb passed away, Sonny got possession of Herb's dog, appropriately named Cokie.
I wonder what inspiration may have.
And I think he got to keep the midget belt too from the UWF.
That's cool.
Wait. They had a midget championship.
They did. It was
a little one.
It was a little title.
It was short-lived. Oh, here we
Politically
go. Every cliche in the book. Here we go.
That's 30 years ago, folks. But yeah, there was a little people title, midget title, that was, I think, defended in that one crazy show in Vegas that 250 people attended at the MGM Grand.
Yeah,
crazy. But anyway, YouTube.
Yeah. So we're looking to try and make this more of a video platform with an audio element. We'll be debuting it, premiering it weekly on YouTube. If you're a Patreon, I don't see any reason why we couldn't have it on the Patreon site before it officially premieres to the public, so we can do that as well. Yeah, I mean it's what I've done it in the past, so I don't know why we couldn't do it now. So yeah, absolutely. Should be, I think, Thursdays we agreed upon.
Yeah, Thursdays of the day. Yeah, that's when we put both shows up, and patrons always get the shows 5 days early. So the patrons typically get the shows on Sunday, and then it may take longer because you're doing editing on the video, but the podcast is always going to be given to patrons 4 or 5 days early the Sunday. Then it's released to the general public on Thursday night. YouTube, we'll wait to see how the first ones go with your editing process on them, and if they don't get it to Monday or Tuesday, a few days before the regular drop, I'm sure they'll be able to live with that.
I mean, I've got high goals and expectations for myself to hopefully not interrupt their routine.
Routine, exactly.
Yeah.
But
we're gonna podcast. I expect when they're not there on time, I start wondering what I'm supposed to do with the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. People, they look forward. If it's not there, they're hey, what's going on? Because people really schedule and plan on these things. And now that we have the video element to it upcoming, I think it's going to be the same type of reaction. So I'm excited. This is obviously it's our first episode of the revamp in a lot of ways. So, we're feeling our oats here too. So it's just staying the same is never good. You always want to shake things up a little bit, and I'm I'm a bit nuts, so I at least want to keep things fresh and exciting. I love that Bob is there to kind of reel me in sometimes too. Just to kind of. But I get a little nutty sometimes.
I could never reel you in. Are you kidding?
I got a bit of Tourette's sometimes too. So
I'm just thankful I got through this episode without rasping too much. So
yeah, you sounded good, man.
You think so?
Yeah, you sounded
Sultry Bob Smith.
Sultry Bob. That would have been my wrestler name. There we go. Luscious Johnny Valiant, Sultry Bob Smith. There you go.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Marsh, I mean, it's, welcome aboard again. And this should be fun. Hopefully it'll be fun for you. It's already fun for me. I'm sure it's fun for Bob.
Sure.
We're going to have some fun with this thing and see where it goes. We got a lot of zany episodes coming up, and then we have some really serious stuff too. So we will see where this goes week after week and have fun with it and give people some content that they're going to enjoy. So, and then they'll join Patreon, the ones that haven't, become a member yet. Patreon.com/John Arezzi. Remember that and do it. Marsh, before we close things out, I do want to mention one other thing, and this is a side, not even a side project. It's a major project for me, and it is the baseball podcast that I do now, and it's called The Gibby Show, which is by the star of the show is John Gibbons, the two-time former manager of the Toronto Blue Jays, baseball lifer. John and I started a podcast. The first episode is out, and it's already been out a couple days now, and it is doing phenomenally well. Our first guest was Josh Donaldson of the New York Yankees. There'll be a big name guest each and every week. You can find that not just on all your favorite podcast platforms, but it's also on YouTube, a visual element. It's the Gibby Show. Subscribe to it on YouTube and listen to it. And I talked to John today, and this is an interesting thing because John likes wrestling. His favorite wrestler was Wahoo McDaniel and Dusty Rhodes. And he's like, "Hey, Johnny," he's got this Texas drawl. He goes, "Johnny, let's bring a wrestler on every now and then." I said, "John, you know how to get to people. If you want to bring on somebody like a John Cena or somebody like that, if you can get them, bring them on. I'll be more than happy to talk baseball with a wrestler on our baseball podcast." So that's the Gibby Show, and I'm happy to be a part of it. It's a big part of my life now, as these podcasts are. So I'm turning into a hermit in front of the light and the camera and this stuff. So that's it. I have nothing else to say. What can I tell you?
Hey, he's been a little modest. Let me tell you folks something. The Gibby Show is good. If you haven't heard it or have heard of it, check it out. I think you'll get hooked on it from this very first episode on, because this is something a little bit different. And if you don't know how amazing John Gibbons is, you'll find out by listening to the show. Am I right, John?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even bringing Josh Donaldson on for the first guest, and them talking about the fight that they had in 2016, and that's hilarious. But it was an actual fight between them, and of course Josh is the starting star third baseman for the New York Yankees. So I asked him about how being a teammate of Aaron Judge was, and Josh he's a straight shooter. He's like Gibby in a lot of ways. They both come from that same mentality. They're both a little quirky, but they're both straight shooters. So that was a lot of fun. And the next episode, we got the ace of the Toronto Blue Jays on with us, and Marcus Stroman is coming on, and he's talking to Albert Pujols. All of these incredible names in baseball. Like he says, I'm going to get Doc Gooden, I'll get Darryl Strawberry, because it's like, for me, this is a dream. Baseball has always been my passion in life, other than wrestling and music. That's the nature of my book. It talked about my three lives in baseball, wrestling, and in country music. And now it's kind of full circle back in baseball as I do wrestling too. And it's really fun. I mean, I had a cup of coffee in baseball back in the early 80s, and that's where I met John. He was my roommate with the Shelby Mets. We shared a house with J.P. Ricciardi, who was also a 22-year-old kid who went on to become the general manager of the Toronto Blue Jays, and he hired John for his first manager's gig. And we're going to do a reunion show with the Roomies on the Gibby Show. So it's going to be a lot of fun. If you're a baseball enthusiast, or even if you're not, it's going to be entertaining to say the least. You have a wrestling guy with a baseball lifer, some incredible A-listers in the baseball game as guests, questions, contests. It'll be fun. Give it a listen. Anywhere you listen to your podcast or on YouTube, The Gibby Show. Enough of a plug there, I guess, guys.
I think it's awesome.
Hey, congratulations, John! Congratulations, seriously. I think this is a big deal. I think this is really a major step, and good for you, man. Good for you.
Yeah, I mean, it became the #1 podcast in Canada, in sports and in baseball. Number 15 in the United States. It's just the numbers are there. So a good first episode. We'll be doing one each week, and it drops every single Monday. So keep them busy. But yeah, that'll wrap it up. Before I do wrap it up officially, I'd like both Bob and Marsh to let everybody know where they can reach them on social media, because everybody has a social media following. But Marsh, I mean, you're out there on social media, right?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at RefMarsh. I do my own little hangout talking wrestling. It's all linked up as there as well. And yeah, you can just find me there. Instagram, MarshRef. Still pretty easy to find me. So
you can be found. And what is that shirt you're wearing? It's Mean Mark, I see.
Is that Mean Mark Callis?
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very cool. I like it, man.
Anybody can wear an Undertaker t-shirt, but not a Mean Mark Callis t-shirt.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
True. Yeah, I got a really close friend who's he goes by his middle name, but his first name is Mark, and so he was obsessed with Mean Mark Callis as a small kid. And then when he showed up as the Undertaker, he knew exactly who he was, because it was that Mean Mark. Here he comes, and it was awesome. So he got these shirts.
Very cool.
I like it. It's not as good as my Joe Turco shirt, though.
Wait,
the Continental Nobleman.
Hold the phone.
Yes.
Hold the phone.
I'm only shitting you. I don't know.
Okay. I mean,
but if I did, it would be fun, wouldn't it?
Imagine a Joe Turco t-shirt. My Lord.
Nobleman.
The Continental Nobleman.
Like
you do this thing. I never knew what this meant.
This means the Malocchia in Italian. This means like I'm putting a freaking hex on you. Like the Malocchia. It's like this, and they'd go like this. It was very famous in my family, at least, with my grandparents. We get the Malocchia all the time, and then we get the Batala. The Batala was the slap to the side of the head if you were misbehaving.
Joe Turco could draw some comedy heat.
Oh, yeah. He was my tag team partner, yes. I know.
That's right. He showed you the ropes. Literally.
Yeah, literally showed me the ropes. Yeah. But that was an honor for me to even team up with him for that godforsaken match against Strongbow and Peter Maivia. That was that'll live in infamy for sure. All right, gentlemen, it's always a pleasure. Wrap it up here. That will wrap up this edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight. You can join our private group, Facebook.com, and just look for that. Facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Spotlight Podcast Radio Show. Most importantly, the YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Pro Wrestling Spotlight. So that's where you could find this show and all the other clips that are up there right now. Go to the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to it. And when you listen to the show, especially if you're on Apple, make sure to review it. 5-star review always helps us. If you want to follow me on Twitter, or Bob, I have to mention your social media. Did we do that?
No, we did not.
Oh, damn it, Bob.
No, it's okay. I understand. We got talking about Joe Turco. I mean,
I know that
priorities, man. Priorities. No, you can find me, and Marshall laugh at this. I'm on Twitter at Bob_Bahumba, BAHOOMBA. Bahumba was the name of my first record label back when I was a blues guy, and I founded the label, and I had myself and one other artist on the label, and the word Bahumba came from the late great Canadian comedian Tony Rosato of SCTV, and he used to say that while shaking his pelvis suggestively. Bahumba. It was funnier when he did it. But anyway, I'm there.
Still a catchy name.
Yes, I'm usually there complaining, and also there's a Twitter handle for my music career, which is Robert Charles, CHARELS, which nobody looks at, and I hardly look at it myself. So, but in any event, I'm also at Facebook. Just look for Bob Smith, and you'll find me on there.
There you go.
And that's Twitter is probably the best bet to try to get a hold of me there.
For
Bob
me,
/Bahumba.
There you go. /Bahumba.
/
Twitter.
Madrid, it's Madrid.
Yes, check it out for sure. Twitter for me, @John Arezzi. Instagram, @John Arezzi as well. I was able to get those handles because my name is pretty freaking unusual. If you'd like a signed and numbered copy of my book, Matt Memories, too late. No more. Kidding, of course. John at mattmemories.com. Yeah. I actually just got another order from ECW Press. They were delivered yesterday. So I got 90 books in my possession right now. If you'd like a signed and numbered copy, John at mattmemories.com. If not, just go to Amazon and buy one there. Do me a favor. Please buy one if you haven't bought one already. It would be nice. Maybe I can get another book and write about my intimate affair with Joe Turco. So we'll see what happens. And don't forget to check out the sister podcast on the wrestling side, Matt Memories from Madison Square Garden, covering all the shows I attended from the Mecca of all arenas. The new episode is being taped and will be out September 30th. This may have aired or not before then, but it covers the Shea Stadium show of September 30th, 1972, when Bruno Sammartino took on Pedro Morales. So that is Matt Memories from Madison Square Garden. That show is co-hosted by Tim Poutre. It's written and researched by Richie Garcia. John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast is a production of Matt Memories, LLC. Our co-host, of course, is the illustrious Bob Smith. And our new producer and creative director is simply Marsh. And there he is from Tucson, Arizona. We want to thank our Patreon executive producers, Anthony Pyrus and Joe Holloway, and for all the patrons for your support helping with production costs for this show. Until next time when we talk more wrestling with you, this is John Arezzi for the Pro Wrestling Spotlight.